all want to make money by doing something we love. If you could turn your hobby into your job, you'd never work a day in your life, right? Welcome to Hobby Hustle, the ultimate podcast where collecting passion and business collide. Now, here's your host, Zach Nigett.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to episode 4 of Hobby Hustle. I'm your host, Zach Nigett, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch, and I hope you'll enjoy our discussion today. Today's guest is a former tech salesman who decided he had enough of his day job and wanted to pursue his passion as a collector. In July of 2022, he decided he was going to try his hand as a full-time sports dealer. Since then, he's traveled the country setting up at trade shows ranging from small local shows all the way up to major national shows. Over the past 2 years, he's built an impressive portfolio of rare basketball, baseball, football, and soccer cards, which he offers for sale. He's a huge Mavericks fan and loves Dirk and Luka, as well as having an unhealthy love of Kristaps Porzingis. You can find him on Instagram at JordansCard41. I'm honored to welcome a friend, passionate collector, and full-time card dealer, Jordan Reicher, to the show. Jordan, thank you for joining. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, Zach. How are you?
I'm doing really good, man. I appreciate you taking time to talk with us. I'm excited to learn about your journey because you got a good story here.
I appreciate the kind words, my friend.
Yes, for sure. So first I want to start, man. I know you are a huge Mavs fan, so I'm sorry about the loss. That was tough, but the fact that they made it to the finals this year is impressive because the Western Conference is always tough. So you want to share with us just some thoughts about the team's future? Like what do they need to do, man, to make it all the way next year?
Yeah, we certainly have a bright future. I was not expecting us to make it to the finals, although when we acquired Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington mid-season, that was definitely a turning point, and I had a feeling that we had a shot to get there. So it's disappointing that we couldn't ultimately win the title because it's not easy to get back.
Yeah.
You kind of need the stars to align to do that. But with Luka and Kyrie, I think we just need the pieces around them. We were close this year. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. probably won't be returning. Outside of that, most guys on the team I would love to have back. Derek Jones Jr. may or may not come back, but I think we just need one or two role player missing pieces. A 3-and-D guy would help. We kind of have our front court and back court solidified, so I think we just need a little bit more help from someone who can consistently knock down threes and defend the best perimeter players on the opposing team, and we're close. We're right there.
Yeah. Well, it was cool, man. Obviously, as a Bulls fan, Derek Jones Jr. was awesome for the Bulls for a couple seasons, and then he came to the Mavs, and I was really bummed when they traded away Daniel Gafford a couple of years ago. So it was good to see those guys have success, and like you said, it's not easy to make it back there, but I do think that obviously with Luka and Kyrie as your guys, leading stars, you've got a good chance as anybody. So congrats on a heck of a season. I'm sorry it didn't end the way you wanted it to.
I appreciate it. Sadly, every fan base but one is disappointed at the end of the year. So we're just lumped in there with everyone else.
Totally. So, hey, I want to take it back to the beginning with you. I like to, with all our guests, sort of understand where this collecting passion has come from. So I'd love to learn about sort of what are your first memories collecting and sort of what got you started?
I think it started with me being a big sports fan as a kid, starting at, I think, the age of 3. I grew up in LA. I remember 3 or 4. I grew up in LA. I went to my first Dodgers game and I sort of fell in love. And my grandfather on my mom's side was always a huge sports fan. I think he was probably part of what got me into sports in the first place. And then he helped foster it starting when I was 4 or 5. I think we would go over to my grandparents' house almost every Saturday for lunch and to hang out and watch sports. And as far as I can remember, he would have a pack of sports cards waiting for me for years. And so at first it was just connecting the dots between loving sports and then having something sort of tangible to collect. Obviously, as a little kid, it's fun to open packs. Even now as an adult, it's fun to open packs. But my grandfather kind of started me on my sports card journey, if you will.
That's awesome, man. And was that always just baseball cards, or did you get into other sports as a kid?
It was baseball and basketball. I didn't really get into football cards. until a few years ago when I got back in. But it was baseball and basketball as a kid.
Very cool. And so I'm curious, you said Dodgers were your first game and sort of that was your exposure. You mentioned that you're a huge Mavs fan, or we know you're a huge Mavs fan. When did that transition? Like, there's no Lakers in there for you?
I actually grew up a Lakers fan.
Okay.
Growing up in LA, that's kind of what you do. And my parents weren't huge sports fans. Everyone I was friends with who enjoyed basketball was a Lakers fan. It's just,
Sure.
what it is. And in around 2000, actually coincidentally, when the Lakers sort of started winning, I kind of got a little bit tired of rooting for a team that was expected to win a championship every year. And so, even being runner-up, it was a failure at that point. And I didn't really enjoy that anymore at that time. I was 14 years old at the time, and I kind of decided it'd be more fun to root for an underdog team. And somehow I discovered Dirk. It was Dirk before it was the Mavs.
Okay.
It was just, someone who was different, this tall, lanky German kid who could shoot, was sort of funny looking out on the court. I mean, it's not really something we'd seen before.
Totally.
And I enjoyed watching him a lot, and I started watching his games. And then it was just the logical step to say, well, if I'm going to be a fan of Dirk, I might as well be a fan of the Mavs. And they're a huge underdog because the team was bad at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of enjoyed rooting for a team that was bad, because then if somehow they became good, and by good, I mean like squeaking into the playoffs, it was a huge success.
Yeah.
And so sort of the rest is history from there.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. So sort of that evolution, right, of your fandom, I think your collection has evolved quite a bit. Like you said, you just sort of recently got into football, sort of speaking. Can you tell us a little bit about how that collection has evolved over the years from, those beginnings into where you're now at? And I know you collect some really high-end stuff these days.
Well, I got out of cards from the age of 12, 13 to 4 years ago. And I was in my 30s. No collecting. I didn't think about cards during that time. The cards were in the parents' sort of attic basement somewhere. I didn't even know I still had them.
Sure.
And then pandemic hit, and I think when a lot of people came back in, and one of my best friends said, "Hey, do you see what's going on with sports cards? They seem to be blowing up again." And I said no, and I started looking into it and dove in head first. I didn't do a ton of homework or research or take my time analyzing things. I just went on eBay and said, "Oh, I like that. Let's buy it. I like that. Let's buy it." There wasn't a whole lot of thought behind it. And Dirk had been my favorite player, for almost his entire career and my entire adult life. So it was natural for me when I jumped back in and wasn't exactly sure what to collect to start with Dirk. And it sort of stemmed from there.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And you've got some really special Dirk cards too. So that's pretty cool. I guess, obviously you've gone from sports cards being a hobby to your profession. But as a collector, that's not always easy. So how do you sort of balance that passion for collecting with the business side of things?
It's tough, and I don't always do a great job of it because, there are times where a card will be sent to me on Instagram, or someone will come up to me at a card show and say, "Hey, so-and-so told me to come see you, that you might like this card." And it's a card that I absolutely should not buy, that I have no intention to sell, would not be beneficial from a business standpoint, but a card that I love. And more times than not, that gets the best of me. So, sometimes it forces me to sell some cards that were PC cards that over time, weren't as much of a priority to me, which sort of happens as our collecting journeys evolve.
Sure.
But yeah, that's one thing I sometimes struggle with, is balancing the collecting and business side of things.
Yeah, I get that. But, that's also what makes it unique, right? Because you're traveling the country and, you see a ton of inventory, a ton of cards come across. So you also get an opportunity that not everybody get, to get those really rare cards when they pop up. And as we know, the stuff, that is truly rare, it's like you got to jump on it because you never know if you're going to see that card again. Especially, I know you're getting into some of the 101s and things like that, and the chances you see those again are, slim to none in many cases. So that's cool. Well, I think you're doing a pretty good job, as far as the balance. But I love hearing that the passion still overcomes you, because I think as collectors, we all struggle with that. So, well, cool. So, we mentioned in the intro that you left your day job and made the jump, into this as a full-time card dealer in 2022. I guess sort of talk to us about what that's been like and just what that journey has been for you.
Yeah, so I got back into cards in 2020 and was just dabbling, having no clue what I was doing for at least a year. Maybe at some point in 2021, I started learning enough where I started setting up at local shows in Phoenix once a month, probably on average, probably, twice a month in some cases. And at that point I had kind of a half idea what I was doing, but it was just a hobby still. And me setting up at shows was kind of a way to get rid of some of the inventory that I bought early on that I had no use for, Sekou Demboya and Bol and just a bunch of random
stars these days, all the stars.
Yeah, all the stars who, at some point their Prism Silver PSA 10s were $500, $600, $800. Just craziness.
Yeah.
And so 2021, I was learning a little bit, but really enjoying cards more and spending more time doing it and going to more shows. I think I probably went to my first Dallas show at some point late in 2021. And it was taking up more of my time. And then I got to a certain point, maybe late 2021, early 2022, where I sort of said, hey, I'm doing okay on doing cards on the side as a hobby, making, a little bit of money, not enough to fully support myself, but I, wondered if there was a way that I could shift my focus towards that and make a living out of it. And then in July of 2022, actually right before the National, I guess it sort of decided that it was time to try to take the leap. And, here we are 2 years later.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And congrats on your success in being able to do that, because it's not easy. And, I think that a lot of people think they can do it and it's luxurious and it's so awesome, but it's a grind, man. And it's not always, like you said, it's not just the transactions back and forth and making sure that you're able to make your margins and your numbers, but it's also a ton of travel. And, you guys are on the road a lot, and that sounds really cool to people, but when you're in it day to day, that wears on you. So I guess tell us a little bit about that. Like, what does that day to day, week to week look like for you?
Well, I'm at a point now where I'm probably traveling 3 weekends a month, and the 1 weekend a month that I'm not traveling, I'm setting up at one of the bigger local shows in Phoenix. And the goal is to buy as much as possible, because I have, different avenues to sell cards. So the weekend, the focus is buying, and then sort of Monday, Tuesday, logging everything that was purchased over the weekend, which in lots of cases is hundreds and hundreds of cards. So, I have spreadsheets where, I'm listing every card and when I bought it and where I bought it and what I paid for it. So, when I sell the card, I know, am I making money? Am I losing money? And that's extremely time consuming. So Monday and Tuesday, that's a big part of the focus. And then Wednesday, I have usually a little bit of time to regroup. Sometimes I work on bigger deal with a couple local fellow dealers. Usually Wednesday is a good day for that. And then lots of times Thursday, I'm heading out of town again for the next show.
Rinse and repeat, right?
So yeah, so that's for the most part what my sort of schedule looks like.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, without asking you to divulge any sort of secret sauce, maybe you could talk to us a little about, you'd mentioned, sort of you have various places to sell these cards. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of how you go about actually getting rid of all the inventory that you're bringing in?
Yeah, so I have a few private buyers that I work with who buy pretty consistently. We have sort of, a weekly cadence set up where most of the cards that I buy, I'll put in the spreadsheet and send it over to them, and it'll go to them pretty regularly. So that's a big part of it. And then also some of it I'll buy for show inventory because I like to have a variety of inventory when I'm traveling to shows to display and sell and trade. And then also I'm building my own mystery pack now, which is exciting. That's a big focus moving forward. And the first series of my mystery pack will be running on July 14th. So by the time it airs, it actually may have run.
Okay.
On Pristine Auctions, which is an auction house local to me in Phoenix that I've been partnering with for a while. And they're just going to be auctioned all day on Sunday, July 14th. 600 mystery packs, one card per pack. And so that's something that's been a lot of fun for me to curate.
Yeah.
And something that I'm focusing a lot more on moving forward. That's
really cool, Jordan. I didn't realize that. So congrats on that. That's a cool piece to add to the puzzle. So I guess I'm curious, you said 600 cards. Is there like an official checklist or hit list that people will be able to see? And then is there a variety of price points, or how's that going to work for people?
There is a hit list, and there's going to be a picture of all the chase cards.
Okay.
Which for series 1, I made 12 chase cards, and they range from, like, the chase cards themselves range from around $100 to $18,000 Michael Jordan Fleer PSA 9 rookie card as the main.
Wow. Can you guarantee I get that? Because I'll buy that one.
I guarantee that you have a 1 in 600 chance of getting that, Zach.
That's awesome, man. Wow, that's a big range, though. That's cool. And so those are just auctioned off, though, so you don't know where that price point sits. Like, it's not like, hey, it's a $50, $100, $300 buy-in. It's just, hey, you buy this mystery pack and whatever it sells for, it sells for. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of this hobby now is the gambling gene that a lot of us have, whether it's opening packs or mystery packs. And a lot of what I was doing in buying is helping with other people's mystery packs for the past couple years.
Yeah.
And that's fun, and that's been beneficial from a business standpoint. But I sort of decided, well, why don't I just make my own too? I'm still going to be helping other people's with theirs, and that's what some of the private buyers that I work with what they do. But I'm going to have my own branding and get to choose my own chase cards and sort of build it how I want. And then it's up to customers, to decide what value is that they see, how much they want to bid. So it's definitely taking a chance, but that's business.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. Well, congrats on that. I'm excited to see that launch, and we'll definitely have to keep an eye out for, you said Sunday, July 14th. So like I said, I think this is going to air after, but that's exciting for that first drop. Very cool. I'm curious, you'd mentioned that you like to have a variety of inventory for these shows to buy, sell, trade. How do you go about identifying sort of what that inventory is? Like what calls out to you as something that's worthy of being in your showcase, at one of these shows?
Well, I've become partial to rare cards and one-of-ones. So a decent amount of show inventory that I have are either one-of-ones or, Topps Chrome Reds to 5 and 10, and Gold Prisms to 10, and Topps Chrome Golds to 50, and a lot of the rare stuff that's harder to find. And cards that I enjoy personally, I found that I typically have better luck selling cards that I personally enjoy versus just chasing whatever market trend is, which works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But so a lot of the inventory that I have just sort of stems from what I enjoy either collecting or just cards that I enjoy, keeping in my inventory, that if I don't sell it for 3 or 6 months, I'm happy holding on to it.
Totally. That's really cool. And that's interesting that you mentioned that you sort of decide to go the path of the things that interest you versus the market trends. Because like you said, that's a huge deal, right? Are the market trends and what's currently hot and not. But not following those market trends and dealing in really rare cards bring up probably a challenge as far as being able to value those types of cards. So could you give the audience some suggestions or advice on how you go about, valuing something like a 101?
If there are other players in the same set of the same card. I'll use that as a baseline lots of times. If we're talking a Dirk 1-of-1, I might look at Vince Carter and Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan and Kobe and try to piece those together and figure out a fair value. Or I'll look at that same card of Dirk in a 1-of-1 that's sold in a different year. And, for the most part, for non-rookie cards, the year is not a huge factor for value. Dirk's 15th and 16th year cards are relatively interchangeable. And I find that that's the case with most players. And then if those don't get me to a fair value, I might look at that same card from the same set in different parallels. So if, the number one, the 1-of-1 has not previously sold, try to find the out of 5 and the out of 10. And a lot of it is just, gut instinct. There are times where I might overvalue a card or overpay for a card because, I fell in love with it. And then at some point down the line when I decide, this card doesn't really fit my inventory anymore, or doesn't fit my collection, and I go to sell it, it doesn't always work out. And, I might...
That's part of the game though, right?
Yeah, that happens. I mean, I lose money on cards all day, every day. It's not fun when it happens, but you just sort of take it as a lesson and try to make decisions differently moving forward. And that's all you can do.
Yeah. I'm curious, just sort of sticking on this for one more second. You said that if you can't find like other player 1-of-1s, right, that you'll look to different variations and out of 5 and out of 10. Again, just out of curiosity for myself and the audience, like what type of multipliers do you put on that price value difference from, talking about the out of 5 or out of 10 to a 1-of-1?
It's a great question, Zach. It's most people will tell you it's really tough to just do a blanket statement multiple.
Yeah.
I would say in sets where the parallels look almost identical, like Immaculate, for example. It's a great set.
Yeah.
But the out of 5 green or emerald looks almost identical. It's the same exact card with just a slight tint in the foil on the card.
Right.
From green out of 5 to platinum 1-of-1. There's not a huge multiple on that because visually the card is not all that more appealing. So in that case, it might be a 2x multiple, maybe 2.5, depending.
Okay.
In cases where you're talking about Prism and you're looking at a green shimmer out of 5 to a Prism Nebula or a Prism Black Finite, the cards look entirely different. And the Black Finite and the Nebula are some of the most collectible parallels in the hobby. Green Shimmer, well, it's a nice card. And Black Gold, also numbered to 5 in Prism. Yep. Well, it's a nice card. There's not as many people chasing those cards. So usually the multiple from that set, from Prism out of 5 to 1-of-1, will be significantly higher than if the card's virtually identical, like Immaculate or Impeccable, or some sets that just aren't as desirable. The 1-of-1s are so cool, but people aren't going to chase them. So, Prism Green Shimmer to Prism Nebula or Black Finite, 1-of-1 multiple might be 5x, 10x, 15x, depending. So.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I think that's obviously this is knowledge that you've acquired, as you've done this day in and day out, because, I think a lot of people just think 1-of-1s, it's the ultimate. Granted, there's many 1-of-1s out there now, but, the fact that there is that eye appeal, which we all know is important, but that color variation, because there is, just a foil tinge versus the complete look and feel of, like you said, a Nebula is, really impressive in hand. Obviously, so are all the Black Prism stuff. So, that's really great advice, Jordan. I appreciate you sharing that with us. I guess, sort of also on that advice and education stuff, what sort of strategies have you found work best, or can you recommend to people who are interested in maybe trying to become a dealer like you have and transition from, side hustle into full-time dealer?
It's a great question. I didn't have a clear-cut plan to go from part-time to full-time.
Yeah.
I just sort of decided that the 40 hours I was putting into my career during the week, I was now going to put into sports cards and then some.
Totally.
It was sort of almost just a numbers game of, well, if I'm making, X dollars, which was not much part-time, and I increase the amount of time that I spend on cards by 5x or 10x or whatever it is, can I increase my profits 5x or 10x? And then if I'm learning more and more, can I make better decisions? And if I'm traveling to more shows, will I have access to more cards that I didn't have access to previously that would potentially open up other opportunities? So while there's not a clear guideline that I can provide, I think going to shows has played a pivotal role for me. Mm-hmm. So I would say, if you have the opportunity to travel to more shows outside of your local market and build relationships with collectors and dealers across the country and in some cases across the world, that'll open up a lot more opportunities for you. And
that's great advice. I'm curious to dive in a little bit more on that relationship building, either in the sense of, buyers that you've built and or mentors. I've talked with other people on this show, and obviously mentorship has been a big thing for a lot of these people, as they break in. So can you talk to us a little bit about, building relationships and sort of what that's meant for you and your business over the past few years?
Yeah, absolutely. There are relationships on both ends, people that I buy from, people that I sell to, and then also people that I don't transact with at all, who I just bounce ideas off of. And while I don't really have someone I call a mentor, there's a lot of people who've been doing this a lot longer than I have, who've had success for a lot longer and at, greater levels than I have.
Yeah.
Who I consider friends. And I'm able to pick up the phone and run ideas by them. And, in some cases, it's just, hey, I'm looking at this rare card, I'm interested. But, if it's a Jordan LeBron dual auto, it's not a market that I have explored a ton. And I'm not an expert in Jordan LeBron dual auto values. So, I'll ask one or two friends who've delved into that a lot more than I have. If I have a question about Jordan inserts and how to value that, that's an area a lot more about than I do. So just having different people in mind. I have a good friend who I travels a lot of shows, who I see, 2 out of every 3 shows that I travel to, mm-hmm. who follows the baseball card market more than I do. And my love for one-of-ones doesn't translate over to baseball as much, and his does. And so whenever I come across a one-of-one, Topps Chrome Superfractor or whatever the case may be, in baseball, I'm probably reaching out to him saying, hey, can you help me value this card? So
phone a friend.
Yeah, it comes in handy. I've made mistakes before, and having people, I'll continue to make mistakes, but just having people who, you can reach out to get insight from and is crucial.
Yeah. That's really awesome. And I do think it's important. And obviously, as you're mentioning some of these types of cards, those are big ticket items. You're not dealing with $100, mistakes. You're dealing with thousands of dollars of mistakes. And that valuation can really fluctuate. But that's really cool. I guess you'd mentioned baseball doesn't translate always to the one-on-one. I'm just sort of curious, I know we talked about a little bit of basketball, a little baseball. You mentioned some football, but I also know you're big into soccer. So talk to us a little bit about sort of how you pick and choose where you're getting into cards within those different sports. I
was not into soccer at all until 10 years ago, maybe. And I somehow magically became an Arsenal fan. I don't even really remember how, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But I became an Arsenal fan. I started to watch the World Cup. I think at the time, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who's mm-hmm. One of the greatest goal scorers of probably all time, and certainly this generation, who is with the Swedish national team, was on ads. I believe they were like funny commercials, skits on ESPN to promote the World Cup.
Okay.
And I thought that they were hilarious, and I started to do a little bit more digging into who is this guy. And he's definitely a unique personality. So I sort of at the time decided he's kind of going to be one of my favorite players. So as then I got into cards many years later, he was one of the first people I started looking out for and trying to pick up some of his more rare cards, which he actually doesn't have a lot of. But yeah, I really enjoy soccer. Like I really enjoy basketball, baseball, and football. And so, getting into cards is sort of just an extension of being a fan of the sport for me. And then I try to combine that in a way that makes some business sense as well.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Speaking of business sense, obviously, you've had a lot of success to be able to do what you're doing, but there's obviously going to be a lot of challenges. And we've talked about maybe some of the, buying too high mistakes, but can you talk to us a little bit about any other challenges that you've sort of had to face and how you've overcome those?
Yeah, I think that there's some blind spots that a lot of people might have in how to value cards. I mean, a big part of being a dealer full time is understanding how to value rare cards, which I think, I didn't really fully grasp how to do. And it's still a learning experience for me, how to value a card that has never sold or that has not sold in 2 years, and to try to figure out, what has this player's market done up, down, left, right in 2 years. And lots of times just piecing together that information, the more experience you have with doing so, the more level of comfort you'll have in that realm, because a card that sells, a Michael Jordan 1990 Fleer PSA 10 that sells 15 times a week, it's pretty easy to go on any platform and figure out how much that card's worth.
Sure.
But a Michael Jordan Thunder and Lightning PSA 10 that's a super low pop and sells once a year, if that, is a card that's a lot of fun to own if given the opportunity. I've never actually owned a 10. I think 9.5 at some point I own. But, when that card comes to your table at a show, or you're walking around and have the opportunity to buy it or trade for it or whatever the case may be, you want to kind of make sure that you have, pretty decent insight into how to value that card. Otherwise, you could make a mistake that, if down the future you decide you want to sell the card, it may be difficult because you may have overvalued it significantly. And so, it's just a hurdle is figuring out, sort of with rare cards, as fun as they are and as much as I enjoy them, to have a good grasp on how to value them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's great advice. And, it's obviously from your perspective as a dealer, that this whole value conversation is such a big piece, right? Because that's, they say a lot of times you make your money where you're buying, not always where you're selling, right? Like to make sure you get that good deal. So that's really cool. Well, you've obviously had some explosive growth. I know we were talking a little bit before the show. What sort of current goals do you have, and where do you take the business in the future besides these mystery packs that are coming up? What else is on tap for you?
One thing I want to start doing is traveling to more shows internationally. I think it opens up more doors. I've started to go to a few shows in Canada. And first of all, I really enjoy vacationing in Canada. So it's not a terrible thing to go to Montreal or Vancouver or Toronto and spend a few days there just enjoying the city, and then spend a few days there at a show.
Totally.
But also that opens you up to seeing inventory that you don't otherwise see in the States. And that can lead to growth opportunities, beyond what most people who, stay domestic are used to. So I'm trying to do more of that. I've, dabbled in it a little bit, but definitely looking into a Europe show later this year. Considered going to Macau, but I think that's the same weekend as the Toronto Sports Card Expo. So Toronto will probably win out for that. But one of my goals is to just travel more abroad for shows and try to meet collectors and build relationships internationally more. And then the mystery pack, scaling that, it took me like 3 months to get ready for series 1 of that. And hopefully that does well. And if it does, I would like to run that at least once a month. So being able to pick up 600 cards, that fit what I'm looking for that is not an easy feat at all.
Yeah.
So those are sort of two of my, I guess, priorities moving forward.
That's really cool. And I wish you best of luck. I do think, that there's the international market seems to be exploding. I know that there's obviously been demand. I've personally had the opportunity to build relationships with collectors overseas and able to send them some products from time to time, because they can't get everything over there. But, you're seeing it more. You're seeing more shows pop up, in Europe, in Asia, in Canada. And that's really cool. And I think it's cool that, you get to leverage this passion of collecting to not only run your business, but to be able to see the world is a pretty sweet combo, if you ask me.
Yeah. I mean, you and I can at any point in time, theoretically decide we wanted to go on a vacation to Europe.
Sure.
And we could have a great time. But if we could go on that vacation to Europe and also go to a show and do something else that we enjoy while we're there, and find some cards that we may have never seen before and sell to some collectors that we've never met before, it seems like a win-win. So, I'm trying to do more of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I guess, is that where you think you see the biggest opportunities for people coming into the collectible market is international, or do you see some other opportunities, for people that they could jump on?
I think that the international market certainly is growing, but North America, I think, is head and shoulders ahead of most of the world in collector base as of now. But the show in Macau last year that sadly I was not able to attend, I heard was incredible, and obviously they have amazing collectors.
Yeah,
many parts of Asia and Australia and all parts of the world that we may in the US not have a ton of exposure to. So just, giving a lot of those people the opportunity to go to shows, it's probably the equivalent of what the national is for us. In Asia is the show in Macau. And I think there's been some big shows in Australia. There's more and more in Europe. So I think, if you have the ability to travel internationally, it opens other doors. But that's not to say that everybody has to do that or should want to do that. There's a ton of opportunity in the States too. While I don't travel to a show every weekend, I know some people who do, close to 52 weeks a year, and many of those weekends they travel to 2 shows. So, and you also don't have to only travel to shows to make a career out of this. It's just, to each their own.
Yeah.
But I think from my perspective, combining travel where you get to, see different cities and different countries and whatever the case is, and enjoy cards is a nice way of doing it.
Totally. I guess I want to dig in real quick to something you mentioned, that you don't have to do it through shows, right? Like, I think that people, to your point, hear about shows a lot, and obviously there's a lot of opportunity there. But, if somebody maybe doesn't have that opportunity besides a local show and not having to travel, where else do you suggest helping people find deals, to be able to build their business?
I think Instagram and Facebook are 2 places that come to mind. There's now a lot of sports card exposure on Whatnot and TikTok, and any social media or live selling platform that you choose has opportunities to find good deals, to find raw cards to grade. That's something that is not as much of a focus for me now as it was in the past. But for a lot of people, that's most of their business model, is find raw cards, grade them. When the cards grade well, make money, and can sort of just cycle that.
Yep.
And so that you can buy cards on eBay raw and send them in for grading, and scale that way. There are, collectors groups on Facebook for Michael Jordan sports card collectors. I think there's thousands of people in that group.
Yeah.
Dirk collectors, there are less than thousands of people in that group, but maybe hundreds. Derek Rose, Facebook sports card collectors group, if that exists. He has
that one does. I'm going to look that up when we get off now, because that intrigues me.
There you go. If not, if you want to start that, feel free. But he has passionate collectors too. So just engaging with fellow collectors and fellow dealers, and just exploring social media. And there's a lot of Discord groups with a lot of members constantly looking to buy, sell, trade sports cards. So you can sort of choose to buy and sell and trade pretty much wherever you want at this point. There's no, right or wrong way of doing it.
Yeah, that's great. That's really awesome. Well, Jordan, this has been awesome. I want to respect your time, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk with me and the audience. But before I sort of let you go, I'm curious, is there one sort of golden piece of advice that you would give aspiring collectors or entrepreneurs who want to get into the hobby?
I would say, I don't know that this is super profound, but don't be afraid to make a mistake. There's a lot of people who will hold on to cards or hold on to ideas in their head at all costs. They won't let it go. I can't lose money on this card. You'll hear that lots of times, online, in person. I even though I bought this Bull card 3 years ago, it was worth 20 times what it is today. I just can't lose money on it.
Right.
And I learned early on that it's just part of the business is take the loss, move on, learn from it, and then take the funds and reinvest. So I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes. Take chances. Hopefully, there's education and thought behind decisions that you're making. But when you make a mistake, embrace it, learn from it, move on to the next one. So don't be afraid of that. We've all been there. I continue making mistakes on a regular basis. I'm just trying to make fewer of them. So, I would say take the chance, make the mistake, learn from it, grow from it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because I think, the flip side to that is that you're going to take risks on stuff and you're going to win big, right? So it's like, it's not always just a loss. And yeah, everybody makes mistakes. And I do think that the education piece, like you've talked about, how you've learned over these years and that's evolving for you. But without taking those risks and making that jump, you're going to stay the same. And if that's fine with you, then that's fine, right? But to take those leaps, I think being able to make that mistake and take that risk is important. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with the audience. So obviously the Nationals coming up, that's a big deal. Are you going to be there? And then any other major shows sort of in the second half of the year that you're excited about?
I will be at the National. I've been at every National since 2021, 2022, including the Atlantic City one, which was an interesting experience for a lot of us.
Totally.
That may be the last time that the show is there, and I think
Correct.
that's a good. But I'm looking forward to the one in Cleveland. This will actually be my first National in Cleveland. And then actually after that, there's a decent amount of big shows. Burbank, there's the Fanatics Fest, there's Atlanta, Dallas every 2 months. And then I'm honing in on a European show in the second half of the year. So, a lot of those that I'm looking forward to.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'll definitely see it at the National, and then I've got to play it by ear and see if I can make it out to a Fan Fest, New York or Burbank, or maybe back down to Atlanta. Raphael always puts on a good show down there at Culture Collision. Awesome, man. So, hey, before you leave us, can you give us a shameless plug and let us know where we can find you online or anywhere else that you want people to know about?
Absolutely. So Jordan's Cards 41 is my Instagram handle. Jordan Sports Cards. At some point I may transition the name, but it sort of works for me and has stuck a little bit. But that's where I do a lot of my interaction with people remotely who I can't, see at shows. I do a lot of deals there, mostly buying, but a little bit of selling. I highlight some cards from my personal collection there, some recent pickups, some recent PSA submissions. So please check me out, give me a follow there. And if you have rare, Dirk, Luka cards you're looking to sell, or just want to talk about sports cards, please feel free to reach out.
That's awesome. Well, Jordan, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. It's been an amazing conversation. I think it's really inspiring to a lot of people too, who are thinking about maybe transitioning away from part-time, into full-time. And you've obviously done that successfully. So I'm excited to see you continue to grow and sort of what's coming for you. And I'm I'm really excited that I'll be able to see you in person at the National, man. So thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, congrats on the podcast, Zach. I'm excited for you as well. And thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Jordan. We'll see you soon. Everyone, thank you for watching, taking the time to join us. I hope you learned something or at least found some inspiration. Please be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and of course, share with your friends if this is something that you're into. And remember, keep collecting, keep hustling, and we'll see you next week on Hobby Hustle, where collecting passion and business collide. Thanks so much.
Hobby Hustle is brought to you by Collector Creative. If you're a collectible brand or company looking for help with marketing, branding, design, or development, head over to collectorcreative.com and drop Zach a line. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at collector_creative. And be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Hobby Hustle, where collecting passion and business collide.